What is up, everybody? Welcome to the shift. This is Francisco Rojas. And man, as we move into this off season, there's a flurry of moves, and I guess we've gotten the the winner underway. Kyle Schwarber signs his 5-year, $150 million deal with the Philadelphia Phillies, and that's what has gotten things going here. Edwin Diaz goes to the Dodgers. Pete Alonso goes to the Orioles. There's a bunch that's happened over the last couple of weeks, but now we're getting to the point where, okay, now there's these, I don't know if it's like the next tier of free agents, but there was the Schwarbers and Alonsos and those guys where it was like, okay, those players need to make their choices where they're going to go, and then the rest of these other teams and players can figure out what moves they're going to make next. So I want to get into, to start the show today, I want to get into predictions for the biggest free agent names remaining. I'm going to give you five of the biggest free agent names remaining. So we're going to do that to start the show. I also, a couple other things for the rest of the show. I want to get into the contemporary Hall of Fame ballot results. I know it's been a couple of weeks since it's happened, but I never got really a chance on the podcast to talk about it. So I want to talk about that. Also, like I mentioned, flurry of deals that have happened the last couple of days, my thoughts on those. And then the all-time franchise, we continue with the bit of the all-time franchises. And next up, the Chicago Cubs. So stay tuned to see what players are on the all-time Cubs team. So to start, 5 of the biggest free agent names remaining right now to me. Now there are a couple of other ones that maybe could be considered for maybe to be the top dogs, but to me these were the 5. So I want to go through these 5. So we're going to start with Bo Bichette. Then I want to get to Alex Bregman, Cody Bellinger, Kyle Tucker, and Framber Valdez. So I want to go through these 5. And a couple have been, there's been a talk about, a couple of these guys last couple of days, and some very interesting reports on the first 2 names here to talk about. So number 1, Bo Bichette. So where I predict Bo Bichette to go back, I am predicting him to go back to the Toronto Blue Jays. I think that, and we'll get to some of these other players here and how they could affect some of these others as well. But I just think Bo makes the most sense to go back to Toronto. So now there was this report today from Mark Feisan from MLB.com that Bichette is willing. He is now telling teams that he is willing to play second base. Now, maybe this comes from Bichette and him realizing that, hey, maybe teams are having concerns about me and my shortstop play. And he did play second base in the World Series. So I don't know how much of an effect that's going to have on Bichette's market. It can only be a positive if Bichette is willing to play second base. But the way I view it is I just think the market for Bichette, with the Red Sox, I think there's someone else they prefer, and I'll get to that in a second. The Dodgers have been mentioned, but I don't see him really fitting. I don't really think the Dodgers are going to do much this offseason. Well, they did get Edwin Diaz, but I don't think they're going to do a whole lot this offseason. So I don't see him going to the Dodgers. I don't see him going to the Yankees either. I just don't see him really fitting on any other of the, not that he wouldn't fit with those teams. I mean, what teams wouldn't want Bo Bichette? Look, I'm a diehard Phillies fans. I would love Bo Bichette, him saying he'd play second base. I would love for him to come to the Phillies and for them to trade Bryson Stott and for him to slide in at second base, but that's not going to happen. So I don't see him going to the Phillies or anybody like that. I've seen the Giants. Now that he's mentioned that he'd play second base, I just don't think. I think what makes the most sense is for him to stay where he's been, since the start of his career, and I just think it makes the most sense. And we saw him with some clutch hits in the World Series, and I think there's interest on both sides for sure. There's definitely interest on both sides. I don't think Bichette really necessarily wants to leave if they can get the right price done. And same thing with the Blue Jays. But I think Bichette goes back to Toronto. I think that's where Bo Bichette ends up. Okay, so that's player number one. Player number one, Bo Bichette. I think he goes back to Toronto. Another one that's not a surprise. Going with Alex Bregman here, and Alex Bregman's the next one, and that's who I mentioned. With the Red Sox and their interest, I think their priority here still is Alex Bregman. It was going to be potentially Kyle Schwarber, Pete Alonso, maybe a couple of those guys, but even though Bregman opted out of his contract because he figures he can get a bigger deal, I think he's going to go back to the Red Sox, and I think he still makes a lot of sense for a team there with some young players in Roman and Marcelo Meyer, and Christian Campbell. Like there's still a lot of young talent that I think he makes a lot of sense for the Red Sox. Bregman goes back to the Red Sox. Now there was an interesting report last night, I believe it was. I think it was last night, yesterday. Let's go with yesterday, with Ken Rosenthal reporting that the Diamondbacks may have interest in Alex Bregman. Now, not that it's impossible to see that happen, but that would mean the D-backs are trading Ketel Marte. And I don't think they're going to trade him. I think that, there's been talk the last, 2 to 3 weeks that Marte may be able to, the Diamondbacks might be listening on Ketel Marte, but I don't think that's going to happen. I just think that Bregman goes back to Boston, and I think that makes a lot of sense. Now, Bregman's going to, look, I believe he's a Bregman, I'm pretty sure is a Boras client. And if that's the case, he's going to try to get the best deal and longest, most amount of years, highest AAV. Of course, any player would. Now, maybe he gets a team to go longer on years, but I think ultimately he goes back to Boston. So I think Alex Bregman goes back to Boston. Third player, Cody Bellinger. And I'm sorry, for these first three players, I have nothing like ginormous to say. Like, oh yeah, he's going. This is a hot take. He's going here, or he's going to a different team. Bellinger's going back to the Yankees. I think he's going back to the Yankees. Now there's talk that maybe he goes back to the Dodgers. I don't see him going back to the Dodgers. I just don't think the Dodgers are going to do a whole lot this offseason. Now, maybe, there's Tommy Edman. I think it's they're starting center fielder of the Dodgers. Maybe Bellinger goes there and plays center field. That's possible. But again, especially after the Dodgers just gave Diaz, a deal here too. I don't know. It just doesn't feel like the Dodgers are going to, I'm just looking at their roster. Now you'd add Diaz to their bullpen. Their lineup is still amazing. Their rotation is gross. I don't know. I could see the Yankees, needing all the offensive help that they can, get heading into this season. Not that they were bad. They weren't bad last year, but I'm just saying Bellinger was a big part of that. And Bellinger has had, with the Yankees, he was good last year. Had one of the better seasons of his career since his MVP season back with in 2019 with the Dodgers. So Bellinger feels like a Yankee. Feels like he's staying with the Yankees. I'm going Cody back to the Bronx. Next couple ones. Yes, for the last two players here, I'm going different. I'm going different teams. They're not re-signing with their team. Kyle Tucker is going to sign with the New York Mets. There's talk about the Blue Jays. I think, again, like I said, I think Bichette's going back to the Blue Jays. I don't think the Blue Jays are going to sign both Bichette and Tucker, both long-term deals. I mean, that Tucker deal is going to be a long. He's going to get what, like 7 to 10 years, probably in the 8 to 10 year range. Upwards of 375 and more. Maybe probably 400. The Mets, who did not bring back Pete Alonso, did not bring back Edwin Diaz. They bring in Jorge Polanco now, and they just signed Luke Weaver. Also, since they're not giving a lot, not giving a long-term deal to Alonso or Edwin Diaz, I think it would make sense for them. And I mean, Bellinger to the Mets would also make sense as well. But I think they're known to swing big. They swung big, obviously, on Soto last year. I think Tucker's a Met. Kyle Tucker is going to the Mets. Framber Valdez, the last player on my list here. And guess what? He's going to the Mets too. Makes too much sense for their rotation. I mean, when you're looking at their rotation, there's a lot of youth there with Nolan McLean, and and I mean, I wouldn't say Senga's part of that youth, but you have the three young pitchers with McLean, Tong, and his name is escaping me, but Tong, McLean, and you know who I'm talking about. I apologize. And it'll come back to me eventually. But regardless of the youth, like, they need an ace. They need an ace. And Valdez has been one of the better pitchers in the American League with the Astros, since he's been, since he's been with the Astros. So I think that it only makes sense for Valdez to go to somebody like the Mets. And again, he's going to get one of the top deals on the market. He's got obviously a huge one with the Blue Jays, and Rangers going to get a good deal too. Ranger Suarez. I think Ranger Suarez is going to the Orioles. I think either Valdez or Rangers going to go to the Orioles. Now, obviously, I need to give you a concrete answer here. I'm saying Valdez is a Met. I think Valdez is going to go to the Mets. I think Rangers is going to go to the Orioles. And I guess as a Phillies fan, I can't see Ranger Suarez being a Met, but both of those would make sense for them. But Valdez has been more of a consistent, really, I would say he's probably elite, right? Over the last, like 3 to 4 years. And Rangers has been great. When he's been able to stay healthy, but Valdez, has been one of the more elite starting pitchers in the American League, again, over the last like 3 to 5 years. So I think the Mets are probably looking for an ace. I mean, they're right now, Fangraphs has Nolan McLean as their one, and I don't think the Mets want to go in. Not that they don't love Nolan McLean, but I don't think they want to go in with him as the one. Right now, it's McLean, David Peterson, Clay Holmes, Sean Manaea, and Kodai Senga. Now, they did give Devin Williams that deal, so he's obviously they found their closer, and they've decided to not go with Edwin Diaz, and Diaz goes to the Dodgers, like I said. But I think that Valdez just makes so much sense there, and the Mets again have not really spent so much so far. Polanco 2 years 40, Devin Williams 3 years 51. Luke Weaver just got a deal today and got 2 years 30 million. So they haven't spent a whole lot, or at least in Mets terms. The Mets have not spent a whole lot. So I'm thinking Valdez goes to the Mets. But let me know what your thoughts are on these 5 guys: Bichette, Bregman, Bellinger, Tucker, and Valdez. Where do you see them going for their landing spots? And right now, I did do a Twitter question before the start of the show, and I said, who will sign Bo Bichette this offseason? And it's Blue Jays, Red Sox, Yankees, and other. So would love to know if you could, if you're not following the shift right now, go follow us at the shift_media. Who will sign Bo Bichette this offseason? The Blue Jays, Red Sox, Yankees, or other? let me know. Go follow the shift at the shift_media. All right. Let's get to the meat and potatoes. Meat and potatoes. So I do have a book review for you. And it's a baseball book. Obviously, I'm not going to give you some random. I love to read Stephen King. I'm not going to give you a random Stephen King book review on the show. Maybe one day. Maybe one day. But maybe it doesn't. That doesn't really make sense right now. So I'm going to give you a baseball book review. It is probably one of the more popular baseball books of all time, I would say. It was a pretty groundbreaking book when it came out at the time. And maybe you already know what I'm talking about at this point. Maybe you already know. But stay tuned for that in about like 10 minutes. But to start, and I mentioned that I wanted to get to the contemporary Hall of Fame ballot results because, again, I haven't really done a pod since that happened. So here we are on Wednesday, December 17th, and I want to give you my contemporary Hall of Fame ballot results thoughts here. So Jeff Kent gets to the Hall of Fame, and congratulations to Jeff Kent. I will say this. I never try to like bring somebody down, even if I don't think they're a Hall of Famer. Not saying that about Kent here. I'll get to that in a second. Not saying that about Kent here, that I do or don't think he's a Hall of Famer. But I think it's like disrespectful to, like, if you go on social media and then you reply to the congratulations tweet from MLB account saying, Jeff Kent's a Hall of Famer, congratulations. You're like, oh, this guy's a Hall of Famer. Like, this is stupid. Like, don't do that. Let's not. I don't think that's the smartest thing to do. I usually just leave that stuff alone. But I will say this to start off. Congrats to Jeff Kent from the contemporary Hall of Fame ballot results. Jeff Kent was the one who got into the Hall of Fame, and he gets in 14 of the 16 votes. He needed 12. I believe he gets 14, and he's in the Hall of Fame. So Jeff Kent, it was a ballot of Jeff Kent, his former teammate Barry Bonds, Roger Clemens, Fernando Valenzuela, Don Mattingly, Dale Murphy, and Carlos Delgado. That's 7. I'm missing one. And it's going to tick me off. I think I had Gary Sheffield too. Gary Sheffield. Now, I think about half of those guys are Hall of Famers. I'm going to be with you. Kent, look, at the end of the day, I'm not super, there are certain guys we've gotten super upset about in the past, for sure. Like Harold Baines. Like, Harold Baines is not a Hall of Famer, but he's in the Hall of Fame. I don't think Joe Mauer is a Hall of Famer. And I've done a video on that. So if you want to go on the YouTube channel and go to our playlist of our Hall of Fame stuff, you can find that Joe Mauer, and I can include in the description too on the YouTube channel, and you can go watch that as well. But Kent isn't one to me that's, oh, he's an egregious. How is he, one way or the other? And I've done a video on Kent in the past. I think at the end of the day, man, like, Kent does have the most home runs for a second baseman all time. He does. He does have the most for a second baseman all time. And that's a big one. And he had a good career. He had overall, like, really good career as a second baseman. And there's no like gripes for me with that. I think Gary Sheffield's a Hall of Famer. And even though in the past I've said he shouldn't be in the Hall of Fame, but I think he should be in the Hall of Fame. Sheffield, Bonds, Clemens, I think those guys are Hall of Famers. Now, a lot of people were clamoring for Dale Murphy and Don Mattingly. I just don't see the love for Don Mattingly and Dale Murphy. And those guys actually I believe they got less on the results than they had in the past. I think they both got 37.5%. And I think it was either Mattingly or Murphy got 50% last time. I just don't see it for either of those guys. And obviously the two that people talk about when it comes to the Hall of Fame and what was derived interest, I think, in nationally in the Hall of Fame, one way or another, is Bonds and Clemens. And those guys, they didn't even get, I don't think they even got 5 votes out of the 16. And that means that they can get nominated for one more cycle of these, which would be a few years from now for the contemporary ballot. And if they don't get enough votes, well, you need 5 votes to be eligible for the next one. They can never be considered ever again, and that would pretty much, I think, would pretty much kill their Hall of Fame chances. Which I think is a shame because those guys are Hall of Famers. I mean, we can do a whole thing about going back and forth on steroids. I mean, all the steroid stuff. Like, I don't know, man. Like, I can see both sides. I see both sides to it, but at the end of the day, I mean, Major League Baseball knew about it. Um, they've been cheating in baseball for years. Like, it wasn't just steroids. I mean, guys were doing other stuff to get an edge. I know that steroids are a little different. Um, I get it. I just think in my eyes, I still view those guys as Hall of Famers. Like I think Sheffield is. So there were really 3 guys. Like Kent's fine. I still, if I had to give a vote, I probably wouldn't vote Kent in the Hall of Fame. But I also understand I can see both sides. But Sheffield, Bonds, and Clemens are still all Hall of Famers to me. And Sheffield, absolutely, over 500 home runs, has awesome OPS for his career. Um, was a great hitter from the beginning of his career with like the Padres winning a batting title, able to do that, but also like having 40 homer seasons for like the Dodgers, Braves, Marlins, um, Yankees in there, like did it with multiple teams. So yeah, I look, congrats to Jeff Kent. Can see one way or another. If you do think he's a Hall of Famer, totally get it. So Kent does get enough votes to be in the Hall of Fame. If you want to, if you're big into the Hall of Fame, I also did a preview on the for this year's regular Hall of Fame ballot, for the main Hall of Fame ballot, not the contemporary one. I did do a preview for that one, but it doesn't really, you know, matter for now because it's already happened. But in mid to late January, we will have the results for the regular Hall of Fame ballot. And I'll do a little more. I'll do a little more on this year's Hall of Fame on the. I'll do video. I'm gonna be doing videos. I'm gonna be doing pods for it. So stay tuned for that as we get closer. I mean, I think we're about a month away now. I forget the exact date, but we'll be doing more on the Hall of Fame. So stay tuned for that. So that's what I got for you on the Hall of Fame right now. Some other stuff. So I have thoughts on some of these other signings as well. So the Philadelphia Phillies made a couple of moves in the last couple of days. They signed Adolis Garcia and Brad Keller. Now, I'll start with Garcia. Now, again, it's a little different for me because look, I work in Philadelphia sports radio as a host and a producer. And I'm just a diehard Philadelphia sports fan in general. So when it comes to Philly sports, I mean, I'm locked into Major League Baseball obviously all the time, but Philly sports, almost even more, just because that's my main job, and that's how I've grown up. So when it comes to the Phillies, looking at these signings, obviously there's a little biasness here whenever I give my opinion, but trying to look at this as objective as possible. Brad Keller going to the Phillies, and Brad Keller, and he's not somebody. Look, obviously we look, and it's a 2-year, $22 million deal. Keller trying to help out a bullpen. So the Phillies lose David Robertson now, and the back end of their bullpen with Keller looks like Alvarado, Johan Duran is the closer, but Alvarado, Keller, Orion Kerkering, Tanner Banks. It's a pretty good bullpen, if you ask me, for the Phillies. So Keller goes there. He's coming off like the best year of his career, like no ifs, ands, or buts about it. He had an ERA a smidge over 2, had a FIP under 3, had an ERA plus of 187, and just about 70 innings of work. And that was by far his best year of his career. His rookie year with KC, where he threw about 140 innings, where he kind of split time between being a starter and a reliever. He did have an ERA just over 3, and that was a good year to start his major league career. But other than that, he's been either below average or he's been mediocre with Kansas City. And then last year, or excuse me, with in 2024 with Chicago and Boston, and then with the White Sox in Boston, and then the Cubs last year having definitely a career year as a full-time reliever. So that's going to be really interesting for the Phillies with Brad Keller, but I think it's a good signing. Also, Adolis Garcia, which I think it's a good signing for them. If you're the Phillies, though, I think you'd like to add a little more thump to your lineup. Like it's Garcia, and right now it's probably going to be a mix of like Justin Crawford, Brandon Marsh out there, and left and center. And then really, when you're looking at the infield, like JT Real Muta is really not what he used to be. Alec Boehm is an average hitter at this point. Bryson Stott probably the same deal. Trey Turner had a really good season last year. Bryce, I think, is still Bryce Harper. In Bryce Harper terms, not the best Bryce Harper year last year. I think the Phillies probably need a little more. Now, again, speaking as a Phillies fan, I want them to go out and get Bregman and Bichette, but that's just a pipe dream. I know that. But if you can get one of those guys, I think that would make sense for the Phillies to get one of those guys for sure and add some pop to that, another star, and add some pop to that lineup. So the Phillies go out and get Brad Keller and Adolis Garcia. Garcia on kind of a prove it deal, I guess. 1 year, $10 million. Last couple of years, he wasn't what he was with the Rangers his first 3 or 4 years. So we'll see what the Phils get out of Garcia. Jorge Polanco to the Mets. Now, again, I don't really know what the Mets are doing. Like Polanco, I think Polanco's underrated. He's a good player. Some big postseason moments for the Mariners. So it looks like this is probably going to be their replacement for Pete Alonso. Like, is that really what they're doing? Right now, Fangraphs has Jorge Polanco as their DH. And Vientos playing first, and then Brett Beatty playing third. Like, is that really they're a team that's trying to win now? Like, you don't have Lindor and Soto, and like I don't really get it. Like, I don't. Polanco's a good player. I mean, to me, like you have to go out and get like Tucker. Then you have to, like, especially if you're losing Alonso. Like Luke Weaver, I was about to get to, but I'll just get to him now. Like Luke Weaver, Polanco, those are deals. And I saw on Twitter, I forget who it was, and I apologize that I forget. But those are deals that don't like small market teams make. Someone tweet that, and I was like, yeah, these are deals that small market teams make. Like Polanco, Luke Weaver, good players. I like both. Weaver's a good pitcher. Good relief pitcher. I think Polanco's a good hitter. Good players, but small market teams make these type of deals. It doesn't feel like the Mets. But maybe there's something big coming here. Maybe Tucker, Bellinger, maybe, I don't know. Who knows? So we'll see. There were the reports of them potentially trading for Mason Miller. Now maybe the Luke Weaver deal, maybe that was never going to happen anyway. And I don't see why the Padres would, trade away one of the best prospects in baseball last year and then go out and ultimately give up Miller. And Miller was good for the Padres last year when they got him. I don't really know. So I don't know. Maybe the Mets will. Mets are having a weird offseason. Maybe it would be weird if they went and traded for Miller. I would do it. But I mean, I don't know. There's also the report that they're interested in Luis Robert Jr. So that the Mets were and the Phillies were too. I don't know how much steam that has to it, but there's also those reports out there. Angels side, Jordan Romano and Drew Pomeranz. So the Angels kind of like that deal for the Angels. Doesn't feel like the Angels of the past. They trade Taylor Ward for Grayson Rodriguez, which makes sense for their franchise. And now they go out and get Romano and Drew Pomeranz. So the Angels signed them. Braves re-signed Ha-Sung Kim on I believe it was a 2-year deal. I had it in front of me, and now it went away. But yeah, Ha-Sung Kim back to the Atlanta Braves. The Blue Jays signed Tyler Rogers. So the Blue Jays adding to their bullpen there. And like I said, the Mets also signed Luke Weaver. So the Mets signed Luke Weaver. So Weaver, Polanco, both going to New York. So those are the deals that you need to know about right now that have happened recently in the past 2 or 3 days in Major League Baseball. Now, like I said, I wanted to get to my book review. And I normally don't do book reviews like that. I like books, not in love with them, but I like them. I read recently the Jose Canseco Juice book. And I'll be honest with you, man, I was intrigued to read it. And why wouldn't you be? He was sitting there talking about who he injected with steroids. Of course I want to know who he injected with steroids. And you know who he's injected from the past, like McGuire and like Juan Gonzalez and players like that. I'll say this: it was a good book, and I mean he had an interesting life for sure. There was like the Madonna situation, and there was a lot of talk about advocating for steroids, and it was interesting. It was definitely worth a read. I'll say if you've never read Juice before by Jose Canseco, I think you should. I think if you're a baseball fan, give it a read for sure. I I guess like I don't really have too many gripes about it. It it was more of like a biography mixed in with like advocating for steroids and then talking about who he injected with steroids. Like that's pretty much what it was. It was a biography, him talking about how he grew up and his journey from the minors to the majors and everything that a bunch of stories, being in the majors and the Madonna stuff and then the post career stuff as well, him being blackballed. I mean, he really crapped on the media. I mean, again, this is like a 20-year-old book, which is crazy. Literally 20-year-old book. I mean, he just continuously said a million times how much the media uh, screwed him. But yeah, it was like, yeah, he kept talking about how the media screwed him, and then he kept talking about how he advocated for steroids. But at the end of the day, he's a very interesting person, and it was definitely an intriguing book. So I would give it a read if you have the chance to read Juiced by Jose Canseco. There's a lot of advocating for steroids in there, which as someone, for Canseco to be the guy that's taken him pretty much his whole life. And I think I watched an interview recently that he did within the last like 4 or 5 years. We talked about last when I watched this interview from a couple of years ago. Talked about he's still taking steroids. So he mentioned a million times that if you take them at the proper dose and this and that like they're fine. And I'm like, yep, it's cool. Doesn't mean I'm not going to go out and take steroids now, just because he's telling me that they're the proper dose and all this and all that. I don't know, but it was a good book. I enjoyed it, but definitely worth a read if you're a baseball fan, and I assume you are if you're watching or listening to this podcast. So definitely worth a read. Jose Canseco's Juiced book. All right, last but not least, let's get to the close here. So I haven't done all-time franchise in a while. Back when me and Nick Earnshaw were doing the show, we did a bunch of teams, and you can go check if you follow us on Instagram. If you follow us on Instagram at the shift_media, we actually had in there our all-time like lineups. Yeah, and like our stories highlights, we have some of them in there that we have done in the past. So go check that out. But so let's do all time franchises time. Let's do Cubs. Chicago Cubs. Legendary franchise, obviously. And so if you don't know how we've done this in the past, I'm gonna go through catcher to outfield. So I'm gonna do 1 through 8. And then I will also do a starting pitcher and then closer slash relief pitcher. So starting at catcher, Gabby Hartnett, who is in the Hall of Fame. There wasn't a whole lot of, guys to pick from as far as Cubs catchers go. But Gabby Hartnett, who is a Hall of Famer, won an MVP for the Cubs in 1935, has 236 career homers, played with the Cubs 19 years, and had a stretch there from like 1933 to 1939 where he was, constantly getting MVP votes, and won MVP there in 1935 for the Cubs. So Gabby Hartnett is my catcher, my first baseman. Yes, I'm going back this far. And let's be real, man. Like, I wasn't going to sit here when you got Cap Anson on the table, even though he played from 1871 to 1897, 22 of those years with the Cubs. I know. It's like, what are we doing? But look, man, I'm not going to pick Anthony Rizzo or Mark Grace over him. We're not doing it. Going Cap Anson. 84.9 career WAR with the Cubs. And he has 94.4 WAR for his career. And so he's my first baseman, Cap Anson. We're going 1800s. Second base, pretty easy. One of the better hitting second basemen of all time, Ryne Sandberg. Ryne Sandberg, thought it was pretty easy. Ryne Sandberg, second baseman. Shortstop, pretty easy. Ernie Banks, 500 plus home runs. Did play a good amount of career first base later in his career, but I'm sticking with him as my shortstop. Ernie Banks is my shortstop. Third base, Ron Santo, another Hall of Famer there. You just got a Hall of Fame infield there with Santo, Sandberg, Cap Anson, and Banks. So Ron Santo is my third baseman, 340 plus career homers, 125 career OPS plus. And Ron Santo is also a really good fielder, 5-time Gold Glover. So Ron Santo is my the third baseman that I'm going to go with for the Cubs. And then outfield, I don't know. You might find it controversial. I don't really think it is. I'm going Sammy Sosa, Billy Williams, Andre Dawson. I think it's pretty simple enough, right? Sosa, Williams, Andre Dawson. That's pretty easy, those three. And I know Dawson didn't necessarily play like a whole bunch of his career with the Cubs. I played a lot with Montreal from what was like about a decade, 76 to 86. And the Cubs, it was about 6 years. But he did win an MVP there with the Cubs in 1987, where he led the majors in home runs and RBI, and then led the National League in total bases as well. So I'm going Dawson. Great years with the Cubs there. So Dawson, Sammy Sosa, and Billy Williams, the Hall of Famer. So those three. Starting pitcher and relief pitcher. Starting pitcher, Fergie Jenkins. Best Canadian pitcher of all time. I'm pretty sure that's correct. Fergie Jenkins is my starting pitcher. And then closer, I'm going Lee Smith. There was, you could go Bruce Sutter there too, but I'm going Lee Smith. So again, Gabby Hartnett, Cap Anson, Ryne Sandberg, Ernie Banks, Ron Santo, Sosa, Billy Williams, Andre Dawson, Fergie Jenkins, and Lee Smith. So that is my all-time Cubs team. Okay, that is going to do it for episode 103 of the Shift Podcast with Francisco Rojas. Thank you all for tuning in for another episode. And we're going to do a whole bunch as the offseason goes here. More Hot Stove, more Hall of Fame talk as things go. Make sure you subscribe on YouTube. Make sure you subscribe, wherever you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, Google Podcasts, all of that good stuff. So that will do it for me. I'll talk to you guys soon right here on the Shift Podcast.